Let's smoke some ribs. Let me show you how I smoke ribs. I use an electric smoker. I use mesquite or hickory wood. I cook them for 5.5 hours, and I kind of do a variation of the 2 hours unwrapped, 3 hours wrapped. They're good ribs, they fall off the bone, they're tender. I try to keep my ribs between the 3 and 3.5 pound mark. I don't like a big fatty rib, I think it comes out kind of gross. I like them slim, I like them a little bit on the shorter side. And I'm going to show you how we open it, and I do tear the membrane, which I'll be showing you next. What you will need for your smoked ribs: some foil, some brown sugar, honey, and butter for part 2. For part 1, olive oil, salt, and pepper. That's it. A lot of this stuff you probably already have, but those are all the ingredients we're going to be using today, with the exception of some optional parts. So, very first step, make sure your smoker is clean. I do use an electric smoker. I don't have time to use a side-by-side smoker or a pellet smoker. Just checking it with the kids is just too much work. So electric smoker, they're relatively cheap and they're pretty easy to maintain. First step you want to do is, like I said, make sure that it's clean. And then what you want to do is set the smoker at the highest temperature it can go for at least 30 minutes prior to cooking. Throw some wood chips in there, get some smoke built up in that chamber. Once it's time to cook, go ahead and lower the temperature to 225. That's what we're going to cook at for 5.5 hours, 225. As you can see, I cut my ribs in halves. So I cut each rack in half with the knife, and I'm going to show you how to peel the membrane. I'm kind of at a weird angle here, but I'll show you how I do it. The main important thing to do this is you need to make sure that your meat is completely thawed out. If it's frozen or still cold, this is a hard process and it can be extremely frustrating. I take the spoon here and I try to get it under the membrane as much as I can. Just kind of feed it up, and I pull back a little bit. Now that's where I stop. What I do here next is I get some paper towel. Make sure it's dry, get under the membrane, and this helps keep a good grip on it. As you can see, it's just kind of pulling off. And sometimes it doesn't come off all in one piece, but right here it looks like I'm getting pretty lucky, and the meat must have been thawed out. That's how you take the membrane off, or at least how I do it. Remember, make sure the meat is completely thawed. I'm gonna go ahead and do this to the rest of them here now. That makes the ribs fall apart even more when you go to eat them. Membranes are stripped on all the ribs. As you can see, there's no more of that white kind of haze that's going across them. So now let's talk about seasoning real quick. I keep it really simple. Cracked pepper or grounded pepper, doesn't matter. Salt, of which I'm almost out of, and olive oil. And I do it in the order of I coat the front and back of olive oil, salt and pepper, kind of pat it down on the meat, and that's it. You can stop there. But this one I'm gonna put some garlic powder. This is completely optional and you don't need to do this. So I'm gonna go ahead and season them up, and I'll show you how we cook them. So the ribs are seasoned, salt, pepper, garlic powder, and some olive oil. As you can see, I went heavy on the pepper because I like pepper. My mom always said, don't trust anyone that doesn't like pepper. Just kidding, she didn't say that. But I did want to say that if you wanted to use a rub that is pre-made, you can completely do that. I just didn't do it in this video because I just ran out from the ribs that I made when we were up in Big Bear. So if you do use a rub, front and back, coat it generously, pat it in, and that's all you really need to do. Don't be afraid to use a lot because it does make a difference in how your meat tastes. So now we're going to throw these bad boys in. This is my electric smoker. It is a Masterbuilt Adventure Series. I think it's a 30 cubic inch. On top is a digital thermostat. There's a little stack house there for the smoke to come out. That's what I use. Plugs right into the wall. Easy peasy, about 150 bucks. We are making smoke. It is now time to put the ribs in. Once again, you don't have to do this, but I think it leads to a more smokier taste. The ribs are in. I try to stack them kind of over each other so the fats that drip off the top drip to the bottom. I do have water in my water pan about halfway up. I've tried apple juice and pineapple juice and really haven't tasted a difference. Make sure to adjust your temperature back down to 225. That's the only number that you have to remember because that's what we're going to be cooking at the rest of the way. This is a completely optional step. In this water bottle is apple juice and apple cider vinegar. I like to spray them down a little bit. I find that the apple juice, the sugars on it, create a little bit of a crust. And the apple cider vinegar, the acetic acid in it, helps break down the connective tissue in the ribs. No idea what that means, but it just sounds right. Don't touch them for 2 hours. Cooking duration, it's gonna be 5.5 hours. It's gonna be 2 hours unwrapped, then 3.5 hours wrapped in foil and all of our ingredients. As your ribs are smoking, what some people do is they put their wood chips in water so they last longer. I don't do it because I just end up wasting wood chips. So what I do is whenever I don't see smoke, I just add a little bit of hickory, a little bit, whatever you got. It's gonna make it taste like smoke, and that's delicious. So don't get too tied up on when to put it, how to put it. Just, if you like a smoky flavor, more chips. If you don't, just kind of take it easy. Just watch your smokestack up there and see what's coming out. All right, the ribs have been in the smoker for 2 hours. This is about what they should look like. I wouldn't suggest eating them at this point. They probably are edible, but might not taste very good. Next part is phase 2. This is where you're gonna need your butter, your brown sugar, and your honey, and your foil. So for each half rack or rack that you have, cut 2 pieces of foil. So I spread the butter out, put some brown sugar, put some honey. This is a pretty popular recipe and not that hard to screw up. Put your rib meat side down. The heat from that rib now is gonna melt everything in there. So what you wanna do is I like to take the first piece of foil, wrap it up like this, take your other piece of foil, and cover it. Now this prevents it from leaking because you're going to keep it meat side down the whole way while it cooks. Make sure the foil is nice and tight. Inspect it real quick for any cracks or tears that may have happened, because the last thing you want to do is to make a mess. This is how they're all going to come out, and then we're going to put them back in the oven for 3.5 hours. All right, the ribs are all wrapped and the meat side is down, so the butter, the honey, and the brown sugar are all just gonna marinate in there and make it super tender. This is the easy part. Put it back in your smoker if you want to, or you can put it back in your oven, because at this point they're not getting any more smoke. They've already received all the smoke from the smoker. Put in the oven 225 for 3.5 more hours. You're probably asking, well, why is this idiot not saying if it's 3 or 3.5? Go by your rib sizes. You can tell these two in the middle are just a little bit bigger, so I'm probably gonna do 3.5 hours at 225 just to make sure that they're all super tender. Just be careful with your little more, little, less little. Yep, ribs, because you don't want to cook them too much. You don't want them too tender, then they kind of get a little goopy. So 225 for 3.5 hours. The ribs are out of the smoker. You can tell we had just a little bit of leakage, which is good that it's not leaking everywhere. This step, you'll want your barbecue sauce, or if you don't want to use barbecue sauce, that's up to you. If you're just a robot and you're like that, that's weird. So you got your barbecue sauce, and what you need is just something to disperse the barbecue sauce, like a little paintbrush, or even just a spoon will work just fine if you have nothing else. So at this point, we're gonna slowly unwrap these. They're gonna be piping hot. What we wanna do is there's gonna be some residual juices in the foil. I like to take the rib out, then pour the juices over the ribs, and then at that point you want to start your oven at 400, because they're going to go in at 400 for about 5 to 10 minutes with barbecue sauce on them. So let's unwrap these and I'll show you what they look like. Quick side note here, as you're unwrapping your ribs, if they don't look tender and falling off the bone, because that's what we're going for here, throw them back in. Just rewrap them, throw them in for another half an hour and check. What you want to look for is the shortening of the bone. The bone should be sticking out at the ends. These are some meatier ribs, so it's not protruding all the way, but I mean, you want the, oh, see? It's just bones are falling off. But that's what you want to see. So if you don't feel like they're tender enough or how you want them, just throw them back in. You're not going to ruin them. All right, so we have our ribs here. They're nice and slathered with barbecue sauce. Oven is set to 400 degrees. These are going to go in for 5 to 10 minutes. It's going to give the ribs a nice crust with the barbecue sauce, and it's going to create a nice texture on top. Once I take them out after 5 to 10 minutes, I lather them up again, back in the oven at 400 for 5 minutes, and then they're ready to eat. These were actually falling apart as I was moving them around to get them nice and basted here. So into the oven. So here we go. Ribs are out, 400 for 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, then back in for 5 minutes at 400. I had to be careful when I was taking these out because they were just falling apart, but that's how your ribs look. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it was quick and to the point, kind of. Hopefully your ribs taste good. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'm gonna enjoy these.